Well, it's a big show tonight. We have on guest, we have Chris Voss from the Liberty Alliance USA. He's the executive director. We also have Ron Freeman from We the People joining us this evening as well. And just our usual cadre of people. So this is going to be a great one. It's Freedom RoundUp.
What must be what?
Shaun Horner, Executive Director of the Heartland Fund Incorporated, Freedom RoundUp. And joining me this evening are my usual cadre of people. We'll start with my left this time, Kress Cambers.
Hey.
And then we also have Greg Moody.
Hey, what's up, guys?
And then Jeff Coleman.
At least I'm not last this time.
I know.
Hey, guys.
We also have Michelle Horner.
Hey.
And joining us special tonight, first out of the gate, Ron Freeman.
Hello.
I wanted to throw the first topic out on the table, and we wanted to talk about this briefing, I guess would be the best way to put it, from Homeland Security. They talked about, how we are bad people for not agreeing and falling in lockstep with the government at large. So I wanted to kind of throw that out the table.
You mean we're Homeland's terrorists?
Yeah, you're terrorists now. We are members of the rebellion, which, incidentally, if I had my choice, I always choose the Empire because their costumes are way cooler. But okay, fine. We're the rebellion.
And their spaceship. And
Yeah,
Star Destroyers.
Yeah,
the
Star
Really
Destroyers.
awesome.
I'm like,
Except for the X-Wing.
Yeah.
Oh, and the ad hats, man. Those are so cool.
Yeah. And the Rebellion, they have those stupid hats. Like, I've never been a fan.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
And we get off topic almost immediately. All right, so no, but I mean, this is like USSR kind of crap,
Yeah, it is.
level. I mean, it's like, so there was one of three things. So we'll do the first one. We'll do each of the 3 points, and we'll kind of dive into them. So the first one was, what was it? It was misinformation or not believing that there is a COVID-19 pandemic.
And anything related to the vaccine.
And anything related, generally speaking, anti-mask specifically. They always bring up the mask thing.
Mm-hmm.
And anti-vaccine, which is actually not a vaccine, but gene therapy. So, guys, generally speaking, do most of the Taliban believe in the polio shot?
No.
Probably not. They wipe their
don't.
rear end with their hand. So.
I bet you most of the Taliban don't even believe in this COVID-19. Look what's happening in Afghanistan right now.
Well, yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I did a test on my personal Facebook page. Did you guys see that?
Yeah, I saw that.
I was, where'd it go? There it is. So the warning, I guess, went away, but there was a warning up there. It might be on your guesses, but I had gibberish going on, and I typed in stopping democracy, more gibberish, and insurrection, some more gibberish, January 6th, gibberish, Joe Biden, a lot of gibberish, and I put in the words COVID-19, vaccine, and coronavirus, and I was seeing if Facebook would ding me on it. And, of course, the little warning up there came up. It said, for information on the COVID-19 vaccine shot, please visit here. Well,
Because that's why you're.
world?
Well, here's the deal. Alexander Marlowe, who's the host of Breitbart morning show,
Right.
He has put this. He put this so perfectly. I'm going to steal it. So, Alex, if you ever want to be on the show, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about your new book.
We're that big that he knows who we are.
Yeah.
And we have his book signed.
Yeah, we have his actually book signed. Anyway, he refers to it as COVID 1984.
It is.
That's good. That's really good.
Or Orson Welles.
Yeah, I was going to say.
1984.
Yeah,
You just got
exactly.
the year wrong.
Yeah, he's a little bit too early, but yeah. I mean, it's crazy the rush to. Just the thought in general that you have to have a vaccine to
Right.
protect those that already have the vaccine.
We are now living in Nazi Germany. It's just like the gold
crazy.
star that the Jews had to wear. Now you have these
you go.
people that had the vaccine cards just like the Jews, and they don't see it.
Well, the Epic Times
they
reported
think we that aren't vaxxed are the Nazis, though they're the ones that are the Nazis.
the Epic Times reported that a couple hundred falsified COVID vaccine cards that were being smuggled in from China. They were stopped by U.S. Customs, which I thought was hilarious because the first thing I would like to mention is with as many stupid people out there taking pictures of their cards, you already have all the information you need anyway. But that besides the point, I don't know why you'd need to falsify the blank COVID cards because they're available from the CDC website.
I can tell you why. You want all these elites that don't actually want the COVID shot, like this did at Barack Obama's party, that don't actually want the shot, but they want to show that they've been vaccinated. So they'll have these cards ready to show that they have been vaccinated. You have all these elites that can buy these fake cards.
So anybody can pull it offline and download it as a PDF and print it out, right?
Right.
So the FBI said if it's a federal offense because...
Not even federal. If you read it, they say it's a local offense. They'll even say it. It's not federal.
Yeah,
Well,
it's not federal. Yeah.
crazy.
Because the CDC has their logo on it, and so it becomes an official federal document that you are lying about.
Yeah, well. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and going back to, I don't mean to jump back too far. Basically, unless this was a, shock to everybody. So what they're doing with that, Kress, is they basically just have a whole bunch of programs running through everything you post, and they're parsing all the data and picking up the words that you're using.
I bet if you put COVID and 19 in separate sentences, it'd be harder for them to pick it up.
They're parsing through. Basically, they're taking strings and separating them, and they see what it is you're posting, and that should terrify everybody because what they're doing is so they know if they tried to censor speech through the courts, they would lose.
Correct.
So what they're doing is they're using their allies in the market.
Yeah.
Yeah, so literally, the first clue that your neighbor might be a terrorist is they're questioning the COVID-19 84 virus.
The second one is...
What was the second one? You go ahead.
That one? Oh, vote. Vote audit.
If you're questioning the outcome of the 2020 election, you are
a terrorist.
A terrorist.
Seems
homegrown
legit.
terrorist. Though 85% of American people now believe that
there might have been some
fraud in the 2020 election.
You think? I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't be bringing this up right now, but everybody watched the Mike Lindell symposium.
Yeah. Bits and pieces. I haven't watched it.
I really don't know what to think about that. I mean, it's incredible the amount of information that he has.
Well, and then they find that these computers that weren't supposed to have anything to connect to the what do you call it, the internet actually had something, and then they had codes on them to change the election results.
I mean,
anything with a Bluetooth connection can eventually get connected to the internet. That's what I don't understand. It's like, well, the machines themselves don't have connections to the internet, and I'm like, but you have to connect a device to it to get the data, right? Well, yeah, we hook a laptop up to it. So when you hook the laptop up to it, you connect it to the internet. It's like...
Yeah. So let's... go ahead.
No. Go ahead. I wasn't saying anything. I
was going to say, let's go after Kress real quick. And I'll go ahead and say that I believe this election was stolen. We've seen what happened at 3 o'clock a.m. Votes stopped everywhere.
Right.
All these swing states and everything.
That was ridiculous.
All right.
And then we've seen this huge uptick in votes for Joe Biden.
Yeah. Well, and they stopped in all 5 of the things that Bernie Sanders said was going to happen if you listen to his speech before: Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona. All those 5 states that it swinged and changed.
All right. So the last piece to know that you are a member of the rebellion.
Is that your 9/11 that you support that 9/11 should be a federal holiday and any other holiday?
Whoa, let me wrap my head around this. So because we think that 9/11 Patriots Day is what we're calling it.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
should be
a federal holiday.
And any other patriot holiday, they think that you're counter.
So 4th of July, we celebrate our nation's independence.
That you're
a terrorist. Okay. Shaun...
That you love our country makes you an absolute terrorist to the Biden administration.
So this is part of what I was saying, this phony altruism of them pretending they care about us and wanting to protect the country. It's incredible the links that they go through to call us conservatives.
Anything but normal. Yeah.
Yeah. What were you saying?
Well, I just wanted to interrupt. I apologize. would you please tell them where this
yeah.
is actually true?
Yeah, this is from the National Security Bulletin from Homeland Security, dated Friday,
Yeah.
August 13th. That just happened. It's the summary of terrorism threat to the U.S. homeland is the name of the bulletin.
So the things that you just mentioned are all on that website, and
Yep.
they're actually saying that they are the people who believe in those things are actually high-risk domestic terrorists. That's what I wanted to let people know,
Yeah.
that is actually a real document and a real thing.
Yeah, you just go to dhs.gov and look up the information.
Yeah, it's right there in the bulletins. It's crazy stuff, everybody. So
Shaun, you know what?
Yeah,
I'm
what?
so excited about our next guest that we're having on. Ron Freeman is with us in studio right now. Ron, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well, Kress. Good to see you.
Holy cow, I'm glad you're able to come on the show.
Excited. Been looking forward to it.
This is awesome.
we literally recorded around Jeff's kitchen table. This is how it.
It's
People
kind of
don't
a
believe. People
kind of a
don't
cool
believe us.
setting.
I know. Me and Shaun met you like when you guys were first starting with the people, and then
Right.
we haven't been. Then we moved like an hour and a half away.
Oh, well, you can come
I
back.
know. And I told Shaun, I was like, why is it every time they have We the People, we're doing something on those days? So I was excited that you were coming. I'm like, yay!
It happens. It's fun though. We're still having a good time, and a lot of good information is getting put out there. So.
Yeah, because we like to start a group like that up where we are. We live in Gentry County.
Okay, sure.
And a lot of people feel the same way Kansas do, that our voices aren't heard, and this is one way to start it. So.
I think it's becoming more apparent, isn't it? That it's like
No, it really is.
And the test is, if you love America, there must be something wrong with you,
Yeah.
and that's really sad.
Well, and DHS, Division
Right.
of Homeland Security, has said, if you love America, you're a terrorist.
Wow.
So, Ron, real quick, before we get into introduction, can you tell everybody when these We the People meetings are and kind of what they're about?
Right. It's the first Monday of every month, including Labor Day.
Okay.
And we get together, we talk about issues, whether it's personal home security or human trafficking, or we get into the CRT debate, what's going on in our public schools, just kind of really what's going on with our community and how we can be involved in making it better.
Fantastic. If you guys don't know who Ron Freeman is, man, I don't know where to start. I'll let you do an introduction on yourself.
Okay,
How about
well,
that?
Yeah, I was born a rich white kid. No, I really wasn't. But if you've seen the movie The Jerk, you know where that comes
Yeah,
from.
that's why I laughed.
That's why. Yeah, I'm a big Steve Martin fan.
But no, I've been in Kansas City for 34 years now. And I've been a part of conservative politics, hosted radio talk show on KNHN station that's no longer in existence. That's why nobody has me on the air anymore. But no, I've been in Kansas City, but getting involved with Chuck Quisenberry about 2 years ago now. And we just started talking about issues and things that were going on and just the tone of our community. And you feel like you have to get involved and do something. And I had a unique experience. I'm a consultant by trade, which I tell people that's a fancy way of saying I'm unemployed. I'll get that next contract tomorrow, maybe.
Maybe. Yep.
But I was working with Lee Summit Schools,
Uh-huh.
and the superintendent asked me, I was working with the leadership team, he said, can we meet outside of Lee Summit and talk? And I thought, well, no big deal. Sure, no problem. We meet. And he asked me a simple question that I thought was ridiculous. He said, can your training prove that Lee Summit's racist? And I thought, well, I said, no. I said, I don't believe that's the case. But I said, also, what I do, my work actually eliminates biases, helps people work together. And from that point forward, he didn't want anything to do with me. But all of a sudden, the very next week, this news headline, Lee Summit racist.
Wow.
Says superintendent. And it's like, are you kidding me? And so this thing, it really gave me pause in the moment. It's like, what have I gotten a hold of here?
That was the last superintendent that Lee Summit had, correct?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, Dennis Carpenter was his name.
Carpenter.
Yeah, Dennis Carpenter. And I thought, this is amazing. Here's a guy, he's black. The district's hired first black superintendent, and you're invited into a community, and your first objective is to label that community. I thought, what's wrong with this picture?
Yeah.
And it really challenged me personally, because I've kind of lived in this bubble, I guess, where I didn't look at things as black, white, but I just looked at we're Americans. We're people who
Yeah,
work
absolutely.
together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I started digging in a little bit and said, let me really consider our nation's history. And it's really phenomenal. We've been told a big lie, first and foremost. And the most egregious, I remember when 1619 came out 2 years ago
yeah.
now. And this is slavery began. What they don't tell you is that 1619, first of all, the British colonies did not have permanent slavery. Everyone was an indentured servant.
Indentured.
Yep.
Average age, 32 years. The first permanent slave, 1641. So 22 years, 7 years indentured servanthood. 22 years, I guarantee you that every one of those people was either dead or freed by the time the first permanent slave came to North America. But we're told they were slaves. Here's the truth. They were slaves on that ship before the British pirates took them to Point Comfort, Virginia. And then they became indentured servants, so they actually had an upgrade in life in so many ways. And so we ignore facts, and there's a lot of things going on in American history that are just simply amazing.
So help some of us layman people out that don't know the difference between slavery and indentured servitude.
Slavery was a permanent status, and it's really interesting. Indentured servanthood was basically a contract that started when the colonists first came here. And you had groups of people, you had the wealthy, you had the politically powerful that were sent here, and then you had those who didn't have the resources to start a new life. And those were the people who came first as indentured servants, and primarily white. And they were, for 7 years, they would work for plantation or agricultural operations, whatever. They would work and produce for 7 years and earn their freedom, along with 40 acres and a mule. That's where that concept came from.
Okay.
But the way it had always been taught to me was slavery, you were property. Indentured servant, you were a person, right? That was the difference. That was the way it was always taught to me. The difference, because that's the person in charge of the land that you're working would treat you one of those two ways. And that was the way it was always taught to me too.
What's amazing, because you don't really hear about indentured servants at all.
Well, no,
they
you
don't
don't.
teach,
No.
and you know that you're not hearing about it at all now.
Right. Well, and the first permanent slave was a guy named, what was his last name? John. It wasn't Booth, but I can't think of his last name right now. But he was when he was made a slave, it was because he ran out of his last year of indentured servanthood. Okay, and a court ruled, okay, you're going to run away your last year. This is going to be your punishment.
Yeah.
And then later on, there was when it became a regular part of the colonies. But the biggest thing that when you look at indentured servanthood versus slavery, where did the concept come from? The British colonies had indentured servanthood, not slavery, and then they began to observe the French and the Portuguese and the Spanish in Central and South America, and how they had chattel slavery.
Yeah.
And they could reproduce, and it reduced the cost of operations, and it allowed them to maintain control of people's lives for generations, and they liked that. I mean, that was a very comfortable thing. And so from an economic standpoint, they thought this is what we should do. And they obviously go down that road. And I find it interesting, from 1661 until 1776, when they got their butts kicked, the British had chattel slavery here.
Right.
It began to end the day that our founders declared, we hold these truths to be self-evident. And that's a reality that most people don't get. We think, well, when did the colonies or the United States start abolishing slavery? 1777. That was when we began to see slavery being abolished. It was driven by the Declaration of Independence, because the Constitution hadn't been ratified yet.
Right.
And you can look at Vermont, you can look at Massachusetts, you can look at Pennsylvania. These states abolished slavery long before the Constitution was ratified.
Right.
They threw it off as part of the British rule, right?
Right,
They looked at
exactly.
it like, if we're going to not be British, we're not going to be British, and we don't have slavery anymore.
Well,
Right.
and the Constitution was also written to eventually get rid of slavery, which you don't hear also.
Right.
They knew right at the moment they couldn't make everybody stop it, but they knew that it needed to end.
That was the whole thing. All men are created equal.
Right.
Yeah, and they
And
kind of tussled over that for years, and it was, well, we'll kind of put the main issue on the back burner. We'll put it on the back burner.
Right.
And then every time it was brought up until our American Civil War is actually the breaking point of the slavery issue.
Right.
Of all men are created equal.
Exactly. And that was set in motion in 1776. One of the cool things to me when you think about our founding fathers and their mindset that you don't really hear about is the first martyr of the American Revolution actually took place in 1770 in a tavern in Boston. The guy's name was Crispus Attucks. And Crispus Attucks was a former slave who'd ran away from, I believe it was Maryland, and ran to Boston, got a job on a fishing crew, right?
Yep.
He worked on an integrated fishing crew. He worked Monday through Friday with white guys beside him, and probably maybe a couple
Yeah,
other
I was
black
gonna-
guys as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so their custom at the end of that week was to go to a tavern to have a beer. And it was there that the redcoats come into the tavern, start pushing people around, and the fishermen stand up, not just Christmas addicts, but the fishermen stand up as a group and says, we're not going to take this. And that's when Addicts was shot, and 4 others were as well.
Yeah, the Boston Massacre.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they all laid and stayed at Faneuil Hall for 3 days together. They didn't have the black guy over here, white guys over there. It was
They were all the same.
They were exactly. And that's the part of the core and the heart of what it means to be an American. And when our founders penned that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, they meant that. And more so, in order for the preamble to the Constitution talks about how in order to form a more perfect union, they had a vision. It was something we're going down the road. We see something that's possible.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
no other civilization has this going for it except the United States of America. It's a very, very unique situation, and it was founded uniquely, and and if we embrace the way of life, what a wonderful country we have.
And you knew we're almost there. We were almost there. And then
Yeah.
all this started happening. They're bringing everything back.
Right?
And it's amazing.
So I just really honestly, I think that, we were at that point. We went through the 1950s, the 1960s. We have cleared up this whole racial issue that happened in America. Yes, look at our history. Our history is our history. We're not proud of the history that happened. No, but we should look back and say, yes, it did happen. Let's not repeat what happened.
Can I amend that just a little bit?
Okay.
I think we should be proud of our history because we're United States of America. We don't need to be proud of every part of our history, but we need to be proud.
Well, we definitely need to learn from
we
it.
need to learn from our mistakes because
learn.
nobody's perfect and we're
Right.
not perfect, but you need to be proud that we are the United States of America, that we have been founded on these great principles, and that we have learned from our past mistakes and not to repeat those.
Well, it's amazing, real quick, because I think we should be very proud of our history because we inherited something from the British. We inherited a way of life from the British, and our founders had to fight through that. Understand this: have we abolished slavery in 1776? The British would have been here the next day to join with the South to take back the
Oh yeah.
colonies.
Yeah.
yes.
In fact, they gave arms during
point.
the Civil War.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean,
Great point.
Yeah.
So
that idea was already there.
But just on my point though, look at how prosperous we have become as a nation. And then I just want to say, it's really confusing to me that I guess we have so much prosperity. Let's invent racism.
Right.
Let's invent CRT.
I don't think they're wanting to invent it. I think this goes with the Communist Manifesto. You have to divide us on what is the best way to divide the people is to create a divide. And what's the biggest divide that they could think of is racism.
Yeah. Well, and it's leveraging mistrust. That's what they do. They use it as a tool to create division and cause people not to trust one another. That's really what CRT is all about. But what they ignore is more significant. And this is something that, as I've pondered this and looked at life, if you think about the American Civil War, and I challenge people with this, name another country in the history of mankind that has sent over 500,000 of its own to die to liberate the slaves that lived within its walls.
Yeah.
Only America.
Only America.
And you're
Oh my
talking
gosh.
about this whole concept of from the Gospel of John about how greater love has no man than this, than he laid down his life for his friend.
Yep.
500,000 Americans said, you know what, those people are important. Black lives mattered in 1860.
Yeah.
The Black lives mattered in 1776. And you had this movement that really galvanized by people of goodwill that focused on the positives and said, let's move forward. What the left wants to do, the communists really, what they want to do is create division and distraction so they can advance their agenda.
Yeah.
And it's insidious. And it really started, you go back and look at America, and I find it ironic that if you go back to 1865, obviously we had our Civil War, and you watch from 1865 to 1965 under Jim Crow, legitimate oppression, hostility, and violence against black people.
Right.
Unarguable, right?
Yeah.
But in that time frame, if you look at the black community, you have, by and large, 2-parent households, faith-centered communities.
Yep.
Absolutely.
You don't have violent crime. You don't have lives being destroyed. You have struggles, sure, there are challenges, but there are people moving forward consistently. And then in 1965, when the doors were really flung wide open for the American dream, what did we begin to focus on? we began to focus on the darkest moments that we could come up with. Not we didn't, they did.
They did.
Yeah, they did.
They did.
They did.
And when they focused on, when you focus on, if I look at any kind of relationship, if I look at you, say if you offend me in some way, Kress, I don't know how you could possibly do that. But if you offended me and you've done 1,000 things positive in our relationship, if I focus on that one negative, I can ruin the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've done that racially. We've said,
Yeah.
let's focus on everything that ever happened negatively to African Americans or really Americans. I find it ironic. Do you ever hear of an African Italian? No, or an African Spaniard? You don't.
No, you don't.
It's only here. And it's like we've fought for this thing, and it really
Everyone should be American. They
You
should
know
be an
what?
African American. I'm not a European American.
right. Yeah,
I'm not.
You're
You,
not.
you brought up a good point because I was watching this video on YouTube that there was, where was it? No, over in UK. It's the UK. Anyway, that's exactly what they were saying. They were saying we're not African Europeans.
Right. We're not African.
We're
Brits.
British.
Well, but that's
Correct.
been something, and Greg and I talked about this a couple podcasts ago about the language. They control the language.
Yeah.
And by doing that, that's just one more little wedge we can put
Yeah.
in there, and it's like okay.
Well, and the left has always not wanted these things for blacks to have their own freedom. They didn't want that. They didn't want them to have the right to vote. They didn't want the women to have the right to vote. They didn't want any of this stuff. And now they're trying to make the divide between women and men. And now
Right.
they're trying to make the divide with between blacks and whites, as well as Chinese, Japanese, you
I was
know,
gonna say,
anything they can.
anything
Yeah.
they can. And now you're having segregation in schools based on your race in certain schools. And now there's all these parents that are these black parents and these Hispanic parents and all that are like throwing fits going, you're segregating our kids from their friends.
Right. Yeah.
Segregation's
Too late.
becoming-
They
We're
run-
going right
It's
back
reversed.
to
They run their agenda.
and now you're having these college kids that are black or white, and they're saying, well, we want to be separate from the white kids, or we want to be separate from the black kids.
We
I'm
want our
like,
own graduation.
They
Yeah.
want,
Imagine that.
and,
right?
yeah, and so I'm just like, where did we go wrong? Where we found the step that Martin Luther Jr. King and his
Yeah.
his ilk
Right.
during that time fought to make sure every single one of us, and I start crying
Defined
every
by the
time.
character.
And they wanted to be defined by the character, and now we're going right back, and they're trying, well, he didn't actually believe that. I'm like, yes, he
Yeah, he did.
really
Actually.
did. And it's amazing
I was
how they
there. I was there.
yeah, but I mean, but these
Yeah.
these Democrats will actually say that's not what he really
Right.
meant,
Yeah.
and I'm like, it is exactly what he
So-
meant, and that's why they killed him.
Are
Yeah.
we seeing this now that maybe the Democrat Party, used to embrace Martin Luther King Jr. and now they're kind of moving away from it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm seeing.
It's only a matter of
I
time
don't think the
before they
Democrats.
drop 'em.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
the
think they've
left's
ever
gonna drop
embraced. I don't think they
King.
really truly ever embraced Martin Luther Jr. King.
They use him as a pawn.
They used him as a pawn.
Right.
And
Exactly.
they've used him as a pawn. They never embraced what he said. They twisted his words to get their own agenda through. And now that's what they're trying to do to the kids. They're twisting his words and making it seem like he didn't really think what was actually going on.
When you look at what Martin Luther King Jr. to what he said, when you go read his "I Have a Dream" speech, and you will find that literally everything that he said we want has been fulfilled.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything that he said, "I have a dream," that my kids would sit down with blacks and whites together and judge by the color. Or they're not by the color of skin, but the kind of the character.
Right.
It happened.
Right.
We're there.
Yeah,
the
we're
space
there.
is here, and it's phenomenal. But here's what you go back and you look at coming out of the '60s, and I remember again because I was a kid, and when you heard that, and I wanted to be just FYI, I wanted to be a Black Panther. That was my idea of how we overcome.
Right.
And as I got into that, what the message that I heard is we want the right of self-determination.
Right. Right.
And that was what the Black Power movement, or whatever you want to call it, the civil rights movement was about. It was like, how can I get these restrictions and limitations taken away from me that are written into the law, that I can't borrow this money, I can't own a house in this neighborhood, I can't do this or that. And those things were torn down.
Right.
And we
Right.
ignored that and said, well, the real important thing here is that we understand that the black people didn't have it fair at first. Okay, true. But I find it ironic that our forefathers went through 100 years of Jim Crow and didn't play the victim card.
No.
No.
And something happened coming out of the Great Society programs, and it's not just Great Society, even the Civil Rights Movement. You find this message that emerges that the real important thing is understanding that blacks have been victims.
Mm-hmm.
They're victims.
Victim mentality.
And what they did with that, and this is what I call the ultimate blackface betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
The so-called black leaders, race hustling poverty pimps, along with the Democrat Party, put on a black face for a Marxist agenda.
Yeah. They really did.
We'll tell them it's about black lives and the plight of Africans in America, but the real thing here is we want to drive home an agenda that no one would ever buy into. No one would ever buy into socialism. No one would ever buy into communism. But if we tell them it's for the sake of black people, they'll do it.
Yeah, but that's
pathetic.
Well,
That's
and
scary.
I look at Jesse Jackson, and he marched alongside Martin Luther Jr. King, and I just want to go up and smack him upside his head because he was with the man himself.
Yeah.
One of the greatest men alive. He was right there with him.
Yeah.
And he's totally gone against everything he stood for when he was younger, when he was with him.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yeah, well, because he enriched himself. He found out that it,
Exactly.
like you said, he found out that it's his meal ticket, and boy howdy, as long as that's coming in,
Yeah.
well,
I
you
get the
could have
money.
made a meal ticket other's too to
Yeah.
fight that.
Well-
Not quite like this one. There's a lot of money in that game, and don't kid
The
yourself.
Rainbow Coalition. Yeah, that's the one he runs. Yeah.
He runs the Rainbow Coalition, but it's not just him. But it's you look at these CRT guys, these speakers that go out to talk.
Oh, we want to talk about this next. Yeah.
You do a 90-minute training and you get paid $12,000. Are you kidding me? Yeah, that money's out there,
man.
and that's what I mean. What do you want me to say? You know, if you're going to pay me, what it comes out to be $4,000 for every half hour.
Yeah.
What do you want me to say? I'll
Yeah.
say it for you.
Yeah.
For that kind of money.
And maybe that's because like you said, I do read the Bible, and I just think what's more important to my soul,
Right.
or do I want to read John?
Right.
Was it John 13, 14, or whatever what you just
Yeah,
read?
John 15, yeah.
Yeah, 15. What's more important to me, my soul or money?
Right, yeah.
And to me, my soul's more important. And
Yeah, here's an interesting Jesse Jackson. I was when I was running for Congress, he had a show called Both Sides with Jesse Jackson on CNN. And and we're talking about issues, and because I'm a Republican nominee and he's Jesse Jackson, a Democrat operative.
And he's not.
And he's going on about how you reconciling the racial history of America, blah blah blah. And I asked him the question. I said, "So tell me something. How is it that in a racist country, a guy like you became a millionaire?" And he literally immediately cut the break.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
when he came back, guess what? He didn't talk about.
Yeah.
That's what we really need to do is really focus on the positive. Because if you look at how many literally millions of blacks in this country have succeeded, and I'm not just talking about the NFL and the NBA. They're
Right.
business leaders. You look at this guy named Reginald Lewis, who was the head of the Beatrice Foods in 1983,
Yeah.
well,
right?
yeah.
Head of the largest food conglomerate in the U.S. How does that happen in a racist society?
Well, it shouldn't.
It wouldn't.
Yeah, it shouldn't. It wouldn't.
We're
Right.
gonna put a black over all the food. No, man, we can't do that because they don't make money. We
And
can't have that.
Yeah, and if we were a truly racist society, we wouldn't have all these black, rich Hollywood actors that people
Right.
adore and love. I mean,
Hello, Oprah.
Well,
yeah,
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
The thing I've always thought about is like the most beloved athlete of my generation, Michael Jordan.
Oh, yeah.
Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, right.
Let's
Yeah.
talk about actors. We have Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
We had Denzel Washington. And what's the other one? The one that the God voice. Blanking out.
Oh, Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman.
Uncle Morgan.
Uncle
as we
Morgan.
call him.
Yeah.
The God voice.
But he does. He's got this beautiful voice, and I'm like,
That's a
I've just never. My son had some black friends.
Uh-huh.
I mean, my son passed away last year,
Oh, I'm so
and he had his best friends were black. He had
Yeah.
3 black, really good friends, and right during and it was before he died, my sister had friends coming over to our house, and they found out that we voted for Trump.
Okay.
And so they called us every name in the book, including
In our
racist,
house.
in our own
Yeah.
house.
Wow.
And I'm like sitting there going, and these boys were downstairs in my house
Yeah.
playing with my son.
Literally.
That's incredible.
And I'm like, and I was married to a Hispanic man,
Uh-huh.
and my
Yeah.
2 daughters are Hispanic
Yeah.
descent. And I was like, you don't know me.
Right?
I
Exactly.
say,
Yeah.
and it's like, my son's best friends are black. If they miss the school bus or late to school, who do they call?
Right?
Me.
Yeah.
If they, their parents are gone and away, who do those parents call for them to stay at my house? Me. I love those boys just as they were my own sons. Even to this day, they were my son's pallbearers. And I'm like going, don't call me racist. You don't know.
You don't
me.
get to. No.
I was like, I love those boys. I was like, I've never seen anybody for color.
Yeah.
Right.
And if I ever did see someone for color, I'm like, damn, I want to go out. I want that color.
Yeah.
You know? I'm like going, I
Well,
walk
as
outside,
we've always said, we are the worst racists ever. 'Cause
Yeah,
we
you got to
suck
step
at
up your
it.
game.
I gotta step up my
We suck
game.
at
But it's just funny how people just want to label someone and they don't know them
Right.
because you make a comment or you vote for someone that wasn't racist himself.
Right.
And I'm like, we should be able to just say, you're an American, I'm an American. Everybody loves
Right.
everyone.
So Ron, you touched on this, and I really want to get into this. I want to get your ideas and whatnot on CRT. We only talked about it briefly. We've touched on it quite a few times on the podcast. I want you to describe it and then kind of take it apart if you could. Just
How
kind
can we kind of fix it?
Yeah, stop it or fix it or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's going to be a tough fix, I think the way you overcome something like that is give people a better option.
Yeah.
Frankly, and basically, what CRT is, it's a philosophical lens that focuses on racial injustice.
Okay.
And it can be defined any way you want to define it. And you can say, on one hand, you can say that it was about time we did something when we got to the Civil War because black people had been oppressed. And you can pretend that blacks have been doing all this stuff by themselves without any help from whites and act like it was something they overcame in spite of white people. But the truth is, people came together. And when people come together, a lot of things that seem impossible are very possible. CRT wants to take it's what they call a lens, their equity lens, where they look at everything through that prism of race.
Equity.
Not
equality.
Exactly.
Oh.
Equity. Yeah.
Okay.
And then again, they wordsmith. Oh man, they are crafty.
I'm telling you, that's how they control 90% of their argument is they flip that word, that one or two word, and you're like, wait a minute.
Well, here's the essence of CRT.
Okay.
I may be sitting with you and we're talking, we're having friends,
right,
or having whatever friendly conversation, and one day I just, for whatever reason, I say, this is so unfair. I feel like you make me feel inferior just because you're white and you've got life so easy and you never have these struggles, and it's it's so unfair to me. What are you gonna now? Do something for me.
Now do something.
Yeah.
And then, okay, where do you go with that? and then that happens. And I'm actually working on a book that I thought was going to be in June. It's probably going to be more like September now. But on rethinking race, and one of the chapters is going to be talking about this whole concept of how we basically use the label of black as a leverage, as a tool. And if I'm black and I don't feel comfortable in a certain situation, it's got to be because of racism. What about when a white person feels uncomfortable? What do you do with that? I mean, it's ironic that if you're in a room full of black people and you're the only white person there and you say you feel uncomfortable, well, you're racist.
Yeah, it's your fault.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. You're
But
racist.
flip that, if it's one black person in that room with a whole bunch of white people, then it's like.
How do you feel in here, Ron?
I'm good. I'm very comfortable. But if I said I was uncomfortable, I could project that and say, you guys, just because you're racist, that's why I don't feel comfortable.
Right,
it's like,
right.
That's not true. That's manipulation. I know. And it's what's wrong. I'd say one of the more profound contradictions to critical race theory and its linchpin, white privilege, is there's a movie out called Hillbilly Elegy. Have you guys ever seen that?
Hillbilly Elegy.
I've
heard about it.
It's based on a true story. It's about a guy who grew up in, I think was it Ohio or Kentucky?
Yes, he became he was a businessman and became a millionaire.
Became a lawyer. I don't know. The story's not over
He became
yet.
successful.
Right.
How about that?
Yeah. Went to Harvard Law School and graduated.
Yes.
But his grandparents, his mom, his grandma and grandpa lived in separate houses because they were so caustic in their relationship. His mom was a drug addict.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Dad was not in his life in any way, shape, or form. Grandma literally forced him to get rid of his loser friends who were pulling down the drug route when he was a teenager. And he got an opportunity to go to school at Harvard and graduated with a law degree, and it just goes into all the things he had to overcome in order to be successful. Well, that story we would think it only happens to black people if you believe in CRT. There's a primrose path that was handed to every white person in America, and they've had it easy. And that explains why there's no white people in poverty in America, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Please ignore rural Tennessee or
Yeah.
Kentucky.
Western
Or
Kentucky.
even Missouri. If you go to a
Missouri,
lot of
yeah.
these, lot of
Rural-
small,
small towns.
a lot of them
Absolutely.
are very poor.
Right?
Yeah.
We ignore those things. I mean,
No.
you can go in Kansas City. There are pockets of impoverished whites and guess what? They have some common tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
Children out of wedlock,
Yeah.
don't graduate from high school, dependent on the government to take care of them.
Right.
That's and I don't care what color your skin is. If you are 14 and have a baby and drop out of school, things probably don't go well for you.
No.
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 And-
You'd be
and-
surprised how that formula works.
Yeah, but if the reason for my struggle is my skin color, which we've handed that to some people, then I don't have to change. And guess what? If my life is a mess and I don't change, guess what's not going to change? My life.
Yeah, their life.
Yeah, where's
And
that?
it's amazing how they're okay with that. They want people to live off the government. They want people under their control and under their thumb
Yeah, and feel defeated.
and feel defeated.
Feel like you've been victimized of everything that ever happens, and you're hopeless.
You see, and that's one reason I'm running for state representative. It's
Yeah.
because I'm sick of this.
Yeah,
I'm sick of the liberals controlling our kids. I mean, because you've gone from one bad liberal policy to our kids to another, to another, to another, and they're just going to keep piling on our kids. And this critical race theory, I'm done.
yeah.
I'm done with it.
And it's a tool. It's a tool
Right.
and when you get into that space, what you hear a lot of them talk about is becoming anti-racist.
Yeah.
Okay? Okay, now I want you to follow me on the logic here. If you are anti-racist and America is systemically racist, don't you have to be anti-American?
Yes.
And that's really the
There
track
you
they're
go.
on. And they want us in that space. And it's amazing how brainwashed people are. I've had 30-something white males and females alike tell me, a black man in his 60s, that I don't understand the black struggle. and
They grew up during the 60s.
So that's an important question. Are you able to keep the straight face when that happens?
No, actually, I laugh at him. I
Yeah,
do
was
laugh.
kidding. Oh, you have to.
Conversation's over. We
Yeah.
have nothing to discuss here
Yeah,
because
we're
if
done.
you believe that you, by virtue of whatever you were taught in your indoctrination syndrome or training, if you believe that's more credible than my actual life experience,
We're done.
We can't help you.
Yeah, we're done. We're
Yeah.
done before we
So-
start. That's crazy.
But we
Yeah.
need more people like you to speak up against, like me and mothers and stuff to
Absolutely.
speak, like Jeff Coleman's that are speaking against, like Kress Cambers, like Greg Moody's. You know, we just need every single person to get involved, stop this, and try to do what we can. And the only way we can do it is, one, we give the power back to the parents.
Absolutely. And parents have to take the power. We've
And they
got
have to
the
take
power.
it.
I
Well,
think
and you said something really important. You said parents,
yes.
right? And that
Yeah.
leads back to what you were talking about, the two-parent
Yeah.
household. 'Cause
Household.
that's a huge deal,
Right.
right?
Well, at least Summit, there's a movement going on now because, again, a lot of it having to do with this the mask policy and the game they're playing with. And it's a game. They don't know what they're dealing with. They have no idea, but they're trying to tell. I was listening to the radio on the way here, and they were talking about how there's been an increase in a 25% increase of children who've been infected by the coronavirus or the Delta variant. And they said this, and it just about fell out of my car. They said they were infected by the unvaccinated people. And I thought, first of all, how do you know? You don't. Secondly,
But that's the new boogeyman.
exactly
Right?
Secondly, we know that the coronavirus, especially the Delta variant, infects people that have been vaccinated,
Vaccinated.
Right.
and they're the actual primary carriers. And
Right.
it's just like, and we're ignoring that.
Yeah, and another thing is they've now come out to admit they can't tell you if you've had the secondary, the original COVID, the flu, or the variant.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's why at the end of the year, they're getting rid of the test because they can't they can't tell you that. They actually cannot tell you.
Right.
If someone took them to court right now and asked them, prove me that I have this.
Right.
They
yeah.
can't.
Well, that's the thing. Going back to 2020, when you look at the whole thing of the test tells you whether or not the environment's favorable for that to manifest.
For the COVID, yeah.
Yeah. Not that it's there. It could be there, but it's like, so we've been running on this track of fear.
Well, that's why they always talk cases.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, and
it's
now
not-
they're,
it's not-
and now they're
it's not
putting this
illness, it's
critical race
cases.
theory on top of it. So you have this fear of this COVID, the fear with the mask, and now you're dividing everybody by the COVID. Now you're dividing by the race.
So please
Right.
stay home.
Please stay
while
home
have-
and
we
hate
have this-
and hate each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Stay home, hate each other, and have this soft revolution in the background.
But right. But all the while they're doing that in public, they're actually in private trying to advance an agenda to where
And
we're
that's what I'm talking about.
dependent on this government to take care of us.
Yeah.
And that's part of the blackface or CRT or COVID face that they're putting it out there. That's the issue. But what they're working feverishly to do is get their system in place so that every American has to bow down to their way of
Yeah,
life.
it's true.
And-
It's true. True, and they like your groups. More and more people need to get
Yeah.
involved with your group. We the people. You need to get in a group wherever you are. Get together. I mean, that's why we have these kind of podcasts is to let people know of you're not alone.
Right. Well, and there's people of goodwill, and I think this is where the challenge is that we are divided. There are so many people who have this idea, but we're not divided like they think we are.
Yeah.
We're really not divided by race. We're divided by philosophical outlooks.
Looks.
Right.
And the CRT is a philosophical outlook, and it demands that you look at people different than you as untrustworthy.
Isn't that what did Condoleezza Rice say? Soft bigotry of low expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it, and that's it. Well, you've got that piece going on, but the thing that really burns my backside is you've got so-called black leaders who are championing Marxism, who are championing every liberal policy they can get their hands around, and they're being paid handsomely for selling out the black community. And anybody who stands up for the black community to actually empower people and to have them live their best lives, they come against that person and actually call us sellouts. Because we dare to believe that if you give a black person the right self-determination, a quality education, you teach a person how to fish,
Yeah.
they feed themselves for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And they don't want that. They would rather have that person come to them and get their fish every day, and then we're better off.
Yeah.
Well, look at these Marxist Democrat hellholes that we call, the inner city, Kansas City, the ghettos, if you want to say that.
Right.
Who's it ran by? The Democrats.
The entire state of California.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, exactly.
Drink.
I mean, bringing that point up, it's just like what you're saying about the grief you get. I grew up listening to Larry Elder on the
Okay,
radio.
yeah.
He got called what was so funny what you were talking about earlier? People would call up and be like, "You don't know what the black struggle is like," without even realizing who Larry Elder is.
Well, who's the other black host that's on Breitbart? He does on that Spotify channel. Is it David Harris? No, Webb.
Okay.
David Webb.
Okay.
And he's talking to someone, and they did the same thing. They called him an Uncle Tom, and no,
Right.
they called him something. He had white privilege, and he goes, "Ma'am, I'm not white."
Right.
That's your first mistake.
And privilege, if we were really honest with ourselves, we'd tell people that the privilege isn't white. It really isn't. It's green.
Yeah.
If you've got enough money, you can do whatever you want, wherever you want in
There
this
you go.
country.
That's the beauty.
It's just
beauty
not
of the
money.
system, right?
It's
Yeah.
if you have enough heart. If you have enough heart, you have enough will, and
Work ethic,
the
yeah.
work ethic, you can do anything and everything.
Right. It's all possible.
have
That's
every
the
possible
American
dream.
Yeah.
Well, that's the dream that those folks have been constantly told. Well, that was possible
But
30
now it's
years
not.
ago, but now it's not. I mean, I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many of our kids' generation are just like, well, there's really no point. I'm never going to
Wow.
I'm never going to.
And they really
getting
do
over
that to everybody.
Getting over that hump is incredible. Just getting them past it's like, no, you really can.
And they teach
Yeah.
that in high school.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, if you keep, and here's the thing though, it's somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is.
And if you have a reckless piece of garbage in the White House that will spend $1 trillion here and $1 trillion there, pretty soon we're going to be talking about real money. And that's the thing now. How many times we heard another $2 trillion
Whatever.
Yeah,
I was going to say,
That's
just
amazing.
stimulus bill.
Yeah.
Right.
And the money never goes where they tell you it's going. Infrastructure.
Right.
We're going
No.
to do $3 trillion in infrastructure.
Not
500,
really.
500 million goes to infrastructure.
actual roads,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the rest is
That's
going to.
just pet
And
projects.
it's just
yeah.
drives you crazy.
It's a money clearinghouse. It,
Yeah,
it
it
always
really
has
is.
been.
They're paying off
gonna
their
get
own
into this
special
charity.
interest.
Well, yeah, the charity
Goes
has
to my pocket.
Has it's just a vicious little circle. It goes right back to the people that voted for it.
yeah.
Oh, what you were talking about with this, one of the first Biden infrastructure bills that he did, they donated to Smithsonian? What was it?
the
Symphony.
The Lincoln Center. No,
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 it was
the
the
Kennedy Center.
The
Kennedy
Kennedy
Center.
Center.
The Kennedy Center,
That's what it
Which
was.
was
which
not the
funneled money back, the government money funneled it back through the Kennedy Center to the politicians' pockets.
Yeah,
Democrats'
and that's how it works.
Yeah. That,
You know,
it really
even
is.
even if they only get 20 cents on the dollar, that's still 20 cents that they didn't have to work for.
Yeah. If you did
Absolutely.
the private sector, it's a Ponzi scheme and you're going to go to jail for a while.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, but if it was Republican, they would, but not if they're
Right. Yeah.
Democrats.
That's a good point.
So.
Yes, Jeff.
Just want to step in real quick. Going back to the critical race theory information, just want to let everybody know that coming up on Thursday, August the 26th, from 6 to 8, at the Lake Lotawana Sportsman's Club, where there's a town hall meeting going to be put on by Missouri Prosper. It just so happens that I'm going to be one of the people on the panel, and I'm looking forward to that. But really what I get from the critical race theory information is the fact that when you boil it all down, what it's trying to teach is there are oppressors and there are the oppressed. Mm-hmm. And that's really what they're trying to teach our kids right now. And when you boil that down, what is that game plan? It goes back to the Marxist game plan of how they work the Marxist propaganda into this whole thing. They get us working against each other, and then the government steps in and wants to save those who are oppressed, and they're the saviors. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. That I want everybody to know that we'd love to have you out on that night. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people there. I'm starting to get calls on it already, some positive, some negative. So please come out August the 26th from 6 to 8 at the Lake Lotawana Sportsman's Club.
And we would really like to have you back, by the way.
Oh, it'd be fun. And
Yeah,
could
I
talk.
think you've got a plethora of information, and
Oh well, we're pretty easygoing.
I also
Yeah.
like to see if you would come to the High Noon Republican Women's Group one time and speak to us too.
I could
We do that
yeah.
in Blue Springs.
Okay,
So,
sure. I like Blue Springs.
well,
I like America. I mean, let's not kid ourselves.
well, my ladies are from all over the
Uh-huh.
General Facility, Lee Summit, Blue
Sure.
Springs.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly, we need people like that to really get involved. And I think it's great to get great people elected, but at the end of the day, if we get great people elected and we have a population that believes that somehow they're victims or oppressed or oppressors, we're still in trouble. And people have to wake up, and we've got to really educate the masses that, hey, guys, there's a better way of life, and we can all live it. I mean, it's relationships, it's people, it's friends. As we grow together, we have a great country.
Yeah, we need people that teach people how to do that, because a lot of people
Yeah.
don't know how to do that.
Right, yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna have to wrap it up now. Ron, you want to plug We the People or?
Yes, we the people, we're going to be getting together. Again, it really is about we the people in order to perform a more perfect union. That's really our goal and objective. We want to see a better community, stable community. We're getting together again September 7th at Lake Lotawana Sportsman's Club, so you'll know where that is, because you're going to go to the 26th to hear Jeff on August 26th. So, and then on the 7th of September, come back and see us again. And we're there every month, and really just engaging people, bringing in speakers to talk about different issues that relate to our community and how we make things better.
Awesome.
You know,
Awesome.
just to piggyback off of that, Jeff and I have been a few times, and it is a fantastic program that you guys do, a fantastic club. You learn a lot because of the speakers that show up. Last week you had Americans for Prosperity
Right,
there.
yeah.
Holy cow.
Right.
You want to talk about an information dump. Those guys are amazing on
Nice.
what they do for Missouri. Jeff's town hall that he was talking about, just a reminder, it is on his social media platforms, Citizens for Jeff Coleman. Search that on Facebook. Once again, August 26th at the Lake Lotawana Sportsman Club. It is open and free to the public, guys, so please show up. That includes the like-minded folks that listen to this podcast and probably the trolls out there that are listening as well.
Nice.
Yes, Ron, thank you for coming. It was,
Thank you, Michelle. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Fun being with you guys.
This portion of the podcast is sponsored by the Heartland Fund Incorporated, sponsoring issues and candidates that care. Appreciate the podcast? Well, it's expensive. Could we bother you for, say, a cup of coffee a month? For $5 a month, you can contribute to our grassroots effort. Donate online, day or night, at www.fundingtheheartland.com. Hello, sir or madam. We would love to hear from you. No, really, honestly. If you have any feedback, comments, or hate mail, or hate female, visit www.fundingtheheartland.com, or you can email us directly at media@fundingtheheartland.com.
If you like the podcast, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. Thanks from all of us at Freedom RoundUp. And now on to the show.
Welcome back to Freedom Roundup. My name is Kress. Thanks for holding in, guys. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. So there's been a lot of talk and debacle happening at the Kansas City City Council with the council members, with the mayor, and we are lucky enough to have on Liberty Alliance's Kress Voss. He's here to break it down for us, and I'm correct, you are the executive director.
Yes, I'm the executive director of Liberty Alliance, and it's an honor to be on with your show, and I'm looking forward to talking about what's been going on over the last 2 months.
Yeah, so we first heard your story come out on the Heartlander. It's online publication. Can you kind of break everything down for us from the very beginning? Why did you guys start looking into the city council and the mayor, and what the heck has been happening?
Sure. So I guess if we want to start from the beginning, this spring, the city council passed their annual budget where they appropriated money across all parts of city government, and they appropriated money to the Kansas City Police Department. Now, according to state law, going all the way back to the early 1900s, the Kansas City Police Department is run by a board of police commissioners, and that board of police commissioners is made up of all Kansas City residents, and they have the sole authority once the money is appropriated to them to spend the money for the police department. And there's actually a state law that states anyone who tries to interfere or stop them from doing their job can be removed from office, and it's a state law that nobody can interfere with the board of police commissioners when they're spending that money.
That's pretty serious.
Fast forward to May 20th, the city council and the mayor, in a same-day vote, same-day ordinance, they jammed through a couple ordinances that essentially stole $42 million and defunded the Kansas City Police Department by $42 million. That money had already been given to the Board of Police Commissioners. The City Council and the Mayor have zero authority to take any money away from them, but they did it anyways. And the worst part is they did it all on the same day. So normally how things work is, an ordinance is introduced, there's opportunity for the public to comment, they have discussions, and then they come back and they hold a vote so that there's, it's a public, transparent process. What they did this time is they introduced it that morning and they passed it that day. And we knew on May 20th that the four Northland members of the city council were not informed, did not know what was going on, and honestly were completely blindsided by this.
Wow.
So when we had heard about this, Liberty Alliance decided to submit some public records requests because we knew there was something going on behind the scenes. We didn't know what we would find, but we wanted to get to the bottom of how did this same day, how did they decide to steal $42 million from our police department all in one day with no public input. So on May 27th, I submitted a whole bunch of sunshine law requests, which essentially allows citizens of the state to get public records from governmental bodies.
Right.
And we asked for text messages and emails that mentioned either KCPD or police funding from the mayor, his senior staff, and the 8 members of the city council who voted to defund the police. And all we asked for was from May 1st to May 25th. And so, pretty limited amount of time. It wasn't like we were asking for years of documents, and only documents that mentioned either the police department and police funding. The city tried to charge me over $400.
Oh my gosh.
For the request. Liberty Alliance actually ended up paying, to get the process going, because they wouldn't start unless we had paid them over $400.
Wow.
They ended up promising to refund us months later, because they admitted that they actually did not have the authority to charge us hundreds of dollars.
Or take the money in the first
and
place. That's fantastic.
Yeah, but they would not start the request until we had paid them. So you know what? We thought these records were important enough, so we moved forward. It took almost 2 months for them to get us all the records. They stonewalled us and slow-walked it every step of the way, and we ended up getting thousands of emails and text messages that showed numerous violations of state law. It showed, and like you said, we've been releasing those documents that are showing what really is happening, at our city council, what the mayor's really doing. But what they did, the most egregious violation that we found was that they violated state law. They were holding secret meetings with a quorum of the city council and the mayor without notifying the public and without notifying every member of the city council. And at those secret meetings is when they decided, they had these meetings over email, and we found some text messages of them holding secret meetings in a rainy night in the car. So they were having all these secret meetings, and now we figured out about it. And you know what? It is illegal. It violates state law, and we are looking forward to making sure that the mayor and every member of city council who were a part of those meetings are held accountable.
So, Chris, is that when Brandon Ellington hit the reply all button that became a secret meeting?
Yeah. So the reason why when he hit reply all, if you are communicating about official business, which, in ordinance would be official business, and a quorum, so 7 members of the city council are present, then that's when it becomes a public meeting. And it's state law that governmental bodies need to give public notice, and every member of the governmental body needs to be notified that there's a meeting happening so that the public can be a part of it, so that there's transparency. And when Brandon Ellington hit reply all, he had started a meeting, and that's where the violation of the law took place.
Yeah, because that was going to be my question, Chris. This is Shaun Horner. I was going to ask if what qualifies as a quorum, because that was my initial question, was were they able to do this at least from a meeting legal standpoint, having enough people? Because I live up in Gentry County, and
Gotcha.
I was kind of curious as to even see if that part was even legal, or if it was even not even a quorum. But it sounds like they had the people. They just figured they didn't have to do it right.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, it's clearly a quorum, and I think it shows how little, our so-called leaders care about the law. There are rules for us and then different rules for them. Mm-hmm. And I think the most shocking thing is, if they would have told the Northland members that this was happening, it still would have passed, right? Yeah,
right.
There would have been 4 no votes, but it still would have passed. The most shocking thing is they view the Northland, which last I checked, I think it's like 40% of the city's population lives north of the river or something around those lines. And, when they do redistricting in a couple of years, they're saying it's going to be half of the representation will be above the river and half of it will be south of the river. But they, those hundreds of thousands of people who live in the Northland, they don't treat them like citizens of Kansas City. They treat them like second-class citizens, and that's clear because when their representatives and their members of city council weren't invited, they lost their representation and they lost their seat at the table. And that's not how, this country works and not how America works. We believe that every single person who's a citizen of this country is going to be equally represented. And you know what? A majority of the city council and our mayor clearly don't believe in that.
Yeah. So one more question for you, Chris. In a perfect world where criminals were actually tried for their crimes, what kind of crimes are we looking at, and what penalties should be doled out?
Sure. So there are a few options, and you know what? My prediction is before this is all said and done, there will be an investigation into this. The state attorney general has the power to investigate and refer sunshine law violations. But there are a couple different things. One, they violated the sunshine law, and one of the repercussions for that is the action that came from that violation of sunshine law, which would be these ordinances that defunded the police. A judge could demand that if they're found guilty of violating the sunshine law, a judge could reverse that action and essentially say those votes on those ordinances are null and void. They don't essentially reverse it, and the money will be restored. That would be really great because obviously we know what kind of violent crime problem we have in this state between St. Louis, Kansas City, and Springfield. And our Kansas City Police Department does a great job, but they can't, they need the resources to fight the violent crime that's happening on our streets. So clearly the funding needs to be restored. Another thing I mentioned, the state law that was passed, 70, 80 years ago that states, anyone who tries to stop the police board of commissioners from doing their job can be removed from office. That was instituted during the Pendergast era. There was a lot of crime and corruption going on in Kansas City. So we believe that when they stole that money from the Kansas City Police Department and they took it back, they have no legal standing to do that. They interfered with the police board's sole authority to spend that money. So there's a possibility. I think this is probably a little less likely, but I think that if the law is to be followed and we're a country that follows the rule of law, that these folks who interfered with the police board need to be removed from office. And obviously that's our hope, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So Chris, as I understand, the media, Kansas City Star and KSHB 41, knew about this before Chief Smith knew.
Yes, that is right. We also uncovered the Kansas City Star was told, I believe at 8:58 in the morning. We had released the emails, and at 8:58 in the morning, the mayor's spokesperson and deputy chief of staff sent them an advance copy of the ordinances. They hadn't even been given final approval by their legal team, but she gave them advance copies. Chief Smith, who we know the mayor does not respect.
Correct.
We know the mayor wants to fire, even though he's doing a fantastic job. Chief Smith was not notified until just a couple minutes before 11 o'clock. I think it was 10:56. So for 2 hours, the press knew that his department was getting gutted, but he had no clue. And you would think that if the mayor had a good working relationship with the chief of police and he cared about public safety, and I'm not saying that if they have the votes and they want to defund the police, the police would have been defunded. But it shows how little respect he has for our men and women in uniform that he can't even let them know. There's no heads up. He is essentially railroading it through at the last second. And the Kansas City Star, they're not protecting our city. The police department probably deserves to know about their funding before Kansas City Star. The other thing we found is that 41 Action News, KSHB, the night that the defund vote took place, on some of their evening broadcasts, they used the words defunding the police because that's what happened, right? That's how they described it. The mayor's office emailed the assignment editor at KSHB and said, hey, we talked this over for 45 minutes. I explained, and I'm confused why you guys are still using the defund the police language. You need to tell your team to stop using it in the future. Can that be reflected in y'all's coverage? 41 Action News replies and says, okay, will do. So now we know that the legacy media and establishment media in this town, their goal is not to inform the public. Their goal is not to, bring a sense of transparency to government. They are entirely in the pocket of our mayor and our liberal members of city council. They don't work for the people. They work for City Hall.
That's crazy.
Really, really sad.
It's like the news media just all over works for the big Democrat donors and stuff. They don't actually work for the people at all. It's systemic.
Yeah, and you know what? It's finally been exposed now because and I can promise you that that's not the only email like that that's happening on every issue. These radically liberal, our mayor and some of these people on the city council, they're dictating the coverage all the time. This is not, the first time that this has happened. And it's, people got to wake up to that because it's a little scary how quick when Mayor Lucas says jump, the media in this town says how high.
Mm-hmm.
There are no other questions asked.
Well, and that's one reason I decided to run for office is because I see this kind of stuff happening and people blindly going along with the news media and they're not actually getting the truth. So I think it's important that everybody get involved, get active, find out the information, the correct information, and do something. So people like you and your group are a perfect example of people doing something. So I wanted to thank you.
Well, and thank you for running for office because, everyone's got to, we all have different roles to play, but, the time to sit on the sidelines, I think, is long past. I think it's time for people to start actively getting involved.
Yeah, and that was my main thing on my campaign is people actively getting involved. People need to, and a lot of people think they're alone, and they're not alone. And they need to see people like you and your organization, which is just normal, everyday, average people getting involved and doing something.
So, Chris, real quick, what media outlets have been talking to you guys, or other than Heartlander, who else has been kind of cooperating, and who else have you talked to about this that's ran the story?
Sure. So I have been in contact with the Kansas City Star. They ended up writing an editorial last weekend.
I'm sure it wasn't Dave Helling.
Yeah, it was. So I worked with Michael Ryan, who is the conservative on the editorial board.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think, the final article, a lot of the other members of the editorial board were able to kind of move that editorial in a certain direction. But I will, I don't do this often, but I will give the Kansas City Star a little bit of credit that they did run, my quotes. They did give our side a voice. Now they also gave half of the editorial to the mayor's team to give their spin. They were given the majority of the article, but so the Kansas City Star has been covering the article. Fox 4 ran a full 2.5 minute segment last week on their evening news, and they did a write-up, and they actually had their lawyer and the Kansas City Star's lawyer, Bernie Rhodes, definitively say, yeah, the law was broken here. The Sunshine Law was violated. State law was broken. So they did a good job of covering it. And then obviously I'm on your guys' show right now, and Pete Mundo's done a fantastic job. He's invited me on a couple times, and he's really been shedding a lot of light on what's happening at City Hall.
I just have a statement. It's, earlier in our conversation, Chris, excuse me, you mentioned the fact that there were issues that have been uncovered with some of the sunshine laws and such, and that it goes far beyond just the sunshine part of it. They actually tried to do this in secret, and they should be held accountable. But in today's world, the left doesn't get held accountable. If it were Republicans, and I hate to say this because we say it all the time, right? It's a situation where Republicans don't get treated the same way as the Democrats do, and it's just a simple fact. It's frustrating and it's disheartening at times, but we got to keep fighting. And I, for one, am extremely glad that you guys are around and that you're doing what you're doing, and I hope you just continue to do this work because it needs to be done.
Well, I definitely appreciate that. And, it helps that we've been getting so much support and people are really paying attention. And I think you're right. It is, there is a different standard, and we see it not just with, these kind of ethics laws and transparency, but we see it with crime, and we see it all over the country. President Obama can have a, 600-person birthday party, and now all these people have COVID. But, if an average person in Missouri goes to the Lake of the Ozarks, it's making front page news in the New York Times. There's clearly a double standard that goes far beyond what's going on at City Council. But I think you're right that the solution is not for us to, I think we can point out the hypocrisy and point out the double standard. But, I think as conservatives and people on the right, I think we really have to do a good job of pointing out the hypocrisy, but not giving up and not just saying, well, there's no point. They're not going to get in trouble, so who cares? Because I think when we start giving up like that, we're losing. I think we have to keep the fire going and do what we can. And I think you're exactly right. It's going to take all of us getting involved and being passionate and, fighting for not only Kansas City, but our country.
That's right.
We have to make sure that the values we believe in are reflected in our government.
So, Chris, is there any more drip coming out this coming week?
Yeah, so I think there will be a few more documents. We received thousands of documents that we've been going through. One document we released last week it showed Mayor Lucas, telling people that 5 members of the city council hate the police, and Cori Bush hates our police department, but we shouldn't criticize her because she's a friend of the city. I thought that was very telling.
Well, she's from St. Louis.
Coming out this week, the city council has told us that there was no, the money was not decreased, right? Funding for Kansas City Police was not decreased. It was just reallocated. It wasn't a reduction, it was a reallocation. That's been their PR line, that's what they've been saying.
That's their whole spin on it, right?
Right, and that's their public relations pitch. But we do have some emails as they're leading up to this where they're calling it a reduction. They know it's a reduction. They just aren't telling the public that. Now they're calling it a reallocation. So we're going to be making sure that the public sees that, they probably paid some crisis communications firm or had some professionals who told them the exact language to use, but they know it was a reduction. We know it was a reduction. We're going to make sure that the public sees that.
Before we let you go, can you help us out and tell us where people can find information like this in the future, or where they can find more information on you and Liberty Alliance USA?
Sure. So our website is libertyallianceusa.com, and we're going to be releasing a lot there. I think people should also follow Heartlander News, heartlandernews.com. They're a great new conservative publication that has been working with us. They have been covering this story. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of your listeners listen to Pete Mundo, and he's going to keep, informing people about what's going on. And Liberty Alliance USA, we're very involved in Kansas City with this deal, but there's a lot of other projects that we work on, a lot of other people who we're trying to hold accountable, and people can see all that on our website. So, anyone who's looking to get involved or, share this story with their friends and tell people what's really going on, that's the best place to start.
Well, Chris, thank you for coming on Freedom Roundup. We really appreciate you doing that deep dive, helping us understand what the heck has been going on, and keep up the very, very awesome work that you guys are doing there at Liberty Alliance.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you all having me on, and obviously I'm very thankful that you guys are doing this show and keeping people informed. And I'm sure we can do this again sometime.
Absolutely. We'll see
That'd
you.
be great.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks. See ya.
All right. On behalf of myself, Kress Cambers, Greg Moody, Michelle Horner, myself, and Jeff Coleman, who's behind me. Have a good evening, all.
Night, guys.
See you. Bye.
And promotional considerations given by Heartland Funding Incorporated, helping promote traditional values and candidates. Contribute at fundingtheheartland.com.